Welcome to Early Access. I'm your host, Katie Whitlock. I'm here with Timothy Carpenter. Hello, Timothy.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Of course. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm lovely. Timothy, actually, this is a coincidence we found out, but Timothy and I live in the same city. And that we had no idea when we first started talking, but we live in the same city about 10 minutes away from each other. Yeah,
10, 15,
not even. Yeah. Let's get right into some things. Timothy, if you could, how we start all these podcasts, if you can kind of introduce yourself, anything you think is kind of relevant for people to know. Also kind of how you came to the Enneagram, what number you are, anything like that, right?
Yeah.
Take it away.
Like she said, my name's Timothy. I was born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm 31 years old. I came to find the Enneagram. I was working at a church, I think when I was 20 or 21, which I think is around the same time that Sleeping at Last, the musician, was doing like an Enneagram series of songs. And I'm sure that was like a big, basically like, maybe not intentional marketing push for the Enneagram.
Probably,
but either way,
yeah.
I found out a lot through that. Yeah, I had a lot of friends in my community at that time that were all like taking it during college and kind of post-college and comparing, which number they were and how trying to, improve their communication between each other and things like that. And so I actually didn't take the test. I think I had somebody, which I was later told may have not been the move. They told me I was potentially an 8 or potentially a 9. And so I kind of just started, assuming like, oh, maybe I'm an 8 or a 9.
Yeah.
And
that's what happens when people tell you your number.
Yeah. And I was reading up on it and starting to, have some of the oh yeah, that makes sense. Maybe I am, this based on these characteristics or traits or other things. And yeah, I actually grew up in a household where one of my dad's, like, he's an entrepreneur, and one of his main, I'd say, offerings in his business is a personality test profile communication tool. And so I kind of had this like aversion naturally to tests growing up in a house where I was told what I was and how I acted, and everything was just like, oh, this is because. And I think as an oldest of 4, I also just felt this like, I don't want to be told who I am or what I am, and I want to discover this for myself. So all that to say, I started hearing about it around my early 20s and kind of didn't really do anything with that for the next few years. And then closer to like maybe 27 or 28, I was getting into therapy pretty intentionally, and actually had one of my therapists recommend like, hey, have you ever taken the Enneagram? I'm not going to say what I think you are, but I have like, some instinct as to what this could be.
Right.
And so I paid like $30 at one of these websites and did the official test and got like a huge PDF. And I was just like reading through it for the test. And I was an Enneagram 4 and Wing 5, I believe, and just was like sobbing as I read through it because I really started to feel like seen, which maybe is, a nice pairing for an Enneagram 4. Just be like, oh, I feel understood by this 30 pieces of paper, more than any human that I've ever talked to, which has been a really cool journey, I'd say, in the last couple of years of talking through that. And like my wife has taken it, and we've talked a lot about how like we haven't really done any formal class work or anything like that. And so I'm actually really excited to be here just to see kind of what maybe your insight would be for somebody who's newer into discovering what the Enneagram has to offer.
What number is she?
She's a 2.
A 2, okay. Yep, keep going.
Yeah. And so that's kind of I'd say how I got into the Enneagram, about as far in as I am currently, is that I feel like I understand what I am, but probably still pretty beginner knowledge as to like the depths of all the, intricacies of, and I do believe, I'd say, as somebody who's taken a myriad of tests over the years, that like this is a great picture into parts of who I am, but it's not like a one-to-one whole picture of any individual. I'm sure that people say that kind of thing, but yeah. So I think it's been kind of like somebody told me once, like, whatever number you are, it's kind of like a color palette where there's all these different shades of red, for instance, and you might be one of those, but you're not exactly like the next one. And I think that's where it's been helpful for some individuality and just for some like insight into, I think it's helped my marriage even in ways that I react to things or ways that I engage with people or situations, and being able to say, oh, I think that's actually a red flag that I read about that might not just be like bad decision making. It's just personality. So yeah.
So when your therapist suggested, hey, I think you should take this Enneagram test. I'm not going to tell you what I think you are, but here you go. Did you still have that kind of initial reaction of like, I don't want to take this because I don't want to know, like, I don't care?
Maybe a little bit. I had developed a pretty strong sense of trust with this person, feeling like I had been able to be pretty vulnerable and seen some success from other recommendations from him. I had one other therapist prior to that I did not have a great experience with. So I think just being able to even mirror those two relationships and know, like, maybe I can trust that this could be a tool. And I think he even may have said something like, we don't have to talk about it. You don't have to take it. It was very like not directive. It was just a suggestive kind of thing, which I think gave me the freedom to feel like, oh, I'm doing this for me, not because I was told to.
Right.
And I don't know, that works for me. So,
yeah, of course. Did he think you were a 4 when it came back as a 4?
Yeah, he's like, that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
So if you can just remember, which parts specifically made you feel really, really seen when you were reading about 4s? Was there anything specifically that kind of popped out at you?
Yeah, I think there was some language around wanting the unattainable, or seeking the unattainable thing, which has been like a huge through line in my 31 years of life, especially in like the later 15 or 16 as an adult. And also, I think it talked a lot about inadequacy and feeling like I'm not enough, or I'm not, so it's like I want what I can't have and I'm not good enough to get it, kind of just like butting heads at every turn and just leaving me with pretty much a like perpetual sense of loneliness, it felt like, or just like, nobody knows me, nobody gets me, and I'm not successful because I can't do the things that other people seemingly can, which is not what I feel. Like, I feel capable and I feel, like I have this purpose in my being, and yet I keep wanting something that I can't have, or I finally maybe do even attain some of those things, and it's just not filling the void. And so I keep, chasing, whether it's like dopamine or career success or both, or, whatever the thing is.
I think I think you just said so many like core 4 things so well, just in those like 6 sentences or whatever that was. That was really good. I tried to write down wanting the unobtainable, but being unable to get it. So when you talk about wanting the unobtainable, what is it? A thing? Is it a career? Is it a relationship? Is it everything? Like, what are you reaching for?
I'd say the like major element of my life that I've chased for so long is this career in music. I've been a musician since like 15 or 16. I started playing guitar seriously, I guess, and then like really into college, started some bands, and the bands had, varying degrees of success, and some felt successful enough to kind of affirm this, like, oh, maybe we could make it, whatever that means, go out and tour or make a living. Or we lived in Nashville for a bit, and a lot of my musician friends were using the phrase like full-time music, which was like a big success point, essentially saying like, I'm not working like a waitress or a waiter job or like, customer service. Yeah, I just get to be a musician. And I've never truly had that. I think I've always worked side jobs to support my art. And I think I'd say at 31, I don't really believe in like full-time music as being this like savior kind of thing. But I do think there's always been like I've been on some tours, one of which was a good friend of mine who got to play some really big rooms. And he asked me to come in as a manager, kind of like merge, just like extra pair of hands doing a little bit of everything. And I think it was the like just most incredible picture of what my whole journey has been, as I've been able to see it like 10,000 feet out, where I didn't get to get on the stage. So every night I'm a part of this thing, and then all the guys go out and play, and I'm alone backstage watching the thing happen. But I quit my somewhat lucrative job, like the first good job I ever had, to basically make no money, because this was the dream. And I had my wife's support. We were young, but there was also this almost just this defeating, man, I'm not doing the thing I want to do, but I'm this close, and I'm always this close. Yeah. And this keeps happening. Like every time I get within inches, it's something in my life, either what feels like trauma or catastrophe or just life change happens. And so then I usually find myself in a bit of a defeated posture. That's kind of been my rhythm. It's like close to success, major defeat, and then like a slow rise back to the next one.
and then it just happens over again.
Yeah. Mostly.
So I think one of the things that I think 4s are, I think right behind 8s, the most misunderstood number. Like, I think people don't understand 4s. I think people think they're just like depressed or like all these, like whatever word you want to use, all these things, right? So I want you to explain something. When you were in the back and you were like, I'm so close to this thing, but I'm not quite there. I think some people would feel that as like motivating, like I'm almost there, I just need to do a little more. So what's different? Because I don't think either way is right or wrong. But it sounds like it wasn't motivating. Is that true? Like it was hard to watch being so close?
Yes, yeah, it was motivating. So I went into the tour and they didn't know, most of the guys in the band didn't know I was a musician. So they were kind of like, oh, extra pair of hands, good friend, good hang, whatever. But I had a record, I think it was my first record under my full name, come out like that week, which is somewhat intentional. And that's like a bit of another story. But I was trying to basically launch this season of being a musician again after what had been a long kind of pause. And so my music came out, and the guy that was leading the tour ended up putting it on the night that it came out in the van, and everybody is like turning around looking at me like, whoa, you do music too? Like, and this is not bad. Like, it's actually decent.
It's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was very affirming. All of a sudden I'm like, oh, I feel understood and I feel seen. And I'm like, now I feel like the roles have reversed almost. And for a moment. And all that to say, I guess to answer your question, when the tour ended, I got asked to go on the next tour for the same role. And I was thinking to myself, like, yeah, at least I'm in the music industry. At least I'm doing this. And maybe this is where I'm supposed to be. And actually, the guy that was opening for the tour pulled me aside and was like, hey, aren't you like trying to be a musician? And I said, yeah. And he said, don't go out and do this like stagehand thing. You'll just keep doing it. You'll just find yourself stuck here. And if you want my advice, and I did at the time, and I'm actually it's been very valuable advice and the course of my
I was about to ask, do you think it was good advice?
Yeah, I think so. It was hard because it was like, I think he was essentially challenging me, which has been a thing in my life as well, to think about, are you doing this because it's like good enough, but it's not the thing? Or are you willing to sacrifice everything to try to get the thing? And I think I felt empowered then to say like, great, I'm going to kind of burn the ships on doing things that are distractions, because I'm pretty notorious for picking up distractions that help other people as a way of probably like avoiding failing myself. It's easier to succeed for somebody else than it is to, fail on my own behalf. And
why do you think? Explain that a little more.
There's less risk doing it for someone else. So I've taken up like
what?
Failure, I think, or perceived failure, or, it's interesting because I think that's a great question, because for instance, I produce records for other artists right now, and I should be like, I haven't released my own music again in a few years, and some of that's intentional. And I think it's good to have breaks and things like that in your art. But some of it's been out of this, like, what if I don't have anything else to say? Or what if I don't do as well as the last record, which I think is something a lot of artists struggle with, especially if there's been any success along the way, is like, what if this one doesn't live up to the expectation or whatever. Yeah. And so I find myself producing these records for other people, thinking like, I can make their record as good as I can help them make it. And then all the success or failures on them. Nobody's really ever looking at the producer often being like, well, the reason this record failed is the producer.
Right.
It's usually the songs or the, whatever. And so I think it's easier for me to like feel needed and be a part of something and connect with someone with their art, especially as a solo singer-songwriter without a band. There's really no other external pressure or motivation to make art unless, somebody's nice enough to send me a message on Instagram or something and say like, we want more music. And yeah, just, I'd say I find myself hiding behind a lot of those other opportunities. Money's been a big thing too. Like in our life, I think most artists I know are somewhat struggling financially, trying to make it work. It's not a great industry to be in.
Don't become a musician if you want to be a millionaire.
Yeah, I kind of jokingly tell all my friends that want to be musicians, I'm like, don't do it. But also definitely do it,
Do it, but also don't.
Yeah.
But you should.
And so I think there's this kind of like go on tour, highest of highs, come back home, recognize there are bills, responsibilities, get thrust right back into real life, and all of a sudden feeling like, I guess I got to go get a job again.
Right.
And I think in the last few years, even just in like my marriage and my family dynamic, that have, even though I feel very supported and I think we have a really good marriage, I think we're in a place where I'm just like starting to question some like end of life trajectory, or just like, is it time to retire? Is it ever time to retire? Is it okay
From
to have
music, do you mean?
Yeah, because I think there's like this drama element that, even I think one of the questions that you had kind of posed to me might be a part of a four's personality makeup, that I don't know if I'm very dramatic as a person. Maybe I am. I don't know if I know enough to say, but I know that I'm pretty extremist with my vision of my life. So like,
I would say that,
I'm
for sure.
either completely going to be a musician, or I'm completely going to be a corporate sellout, or, and there's no in between.
Right.
And you can't.
Yeah.
And so I think as I've tried to mature and grow up a little bit, I'm trying to find some of the gray area and the balance around like, how can I still like, I mean, I'm a musician, I am an artist, and that can't be taken away from me and it can't be defined by like how much money I make, or, how far on a ladder I feel like I've climbed. But I do think that there's been some better decision making as I've gotten older, just around like, you don't have to be like impulsive all the time, or just completely like uproot your life and the people that you live with's life for your own like kind of very focused singular vision. And that's been a fault of mine, I think, in 10 years of marriage, is just like, all right, we're moving and everything's gonna change, we're gonna do
She's
this.
like, wait, yeah.
I know. She's like, what? We just got here. So,
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to go back just a couple minutes. You were talking about it's easier to produce for other people than it is to make your own music and all these things, right? I just had another conversation with a different four who's also a musician, and we were talking about a four's want to be understood. It's like a fear of being misunderstood and also a want to be understood. And what we decided, but then he was also saying, I don't want to be completely understood because I want there to be like an air of mystery, and like I don't think we can completely understand each other and all this thing. And so what I said was, well, it sounds like you don't want to be understood. It sounds like you want to be accepted for whatever weirdness you have going on, right?
Sure.
But maybe you don't actually want people to see all of it. Do you think, the answer to this might be no, but do you think also in releasing your own music and putting yourself out there, there's also a fear of being understood, or any like being seen really in front of a bunch of people? Is it easier to feel a little more mysterious and like keep things to yourself? Is there any part of that?
Probably so. Yeah. I think most of the music I put out has been my best attempt, I think, at it's still a tailored version of my life. I'm choosing my lyrics, and I don't know if any artist on the planet is being completely just like transparent, but I think you can get as close as you can get. And I think that I've done a good job, if I can say so, about writing the hard thing, like putting out things into the world that I'm like, I don't know if I even feel confident to share this because it could offend my family or it could offend other people groups. And that's not intentional. It's just like an attempt to be so raw that like, maybe somebody out there is like, I get that, and I've had moments of that, which is really cool. Like, whoa, this song connects with me. And that's kind of this, I think music is very powerful in its own way, because I mean, most songs anybody connects to are probably not for the reason that the person who wrote it. Like, I think there's almost this like ability to put yourself into story, and then you can feel accepted. And I'd like to perpetuate that and be able to, provide that to other people, as it's been helpful in my own journey. But I guess I don't know if I would say that I'm hiding, or I'm like not putting out more music now because I'm worried if I will be understood once it's released, as much as I think there have been times I put out the music and then I've had like specifically industry people maybe say like, your song wouldn't license very well on television. It's too specific. It's not very like, people can't put themselves into it because it's so granular versus being this kind of open-minded concept, which I think did hurt more than I realized, just thinking like, well, I'm being my authentic self, saying my story, and it's still not good enough. Even if like, not that one instance is the goal, but I guess I think in my early 20s, like I saw some musicians I looked up to play and felt very inspired and thought, especially as I was like very kind of dogmatic with my spirituality and in a church setting at that point in my life, which I'm not as much these days. I'm still very spiritual as a person, but I don't connect as much in the way I used to. And I think when I was in that position before, I was seeing these artists and feeling almost a sense of like, well, this is God's plan for me. Like I was made to do this, and have even had to reconcile some anger, I think, around like I've spent 10 years of my life trying to do this and justifying why it's supposed to happen. And even at 31, still part of me believes that. Like I really think I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing because it's the thing I do, unlike anything else on the planet, that just makes me feel like whole or connected to some sort of source. And I get very envious of people that I think, even if they're not in the music space, they are able to claim that they do that, like for a career and maybe there's like this cultural component that I'm fighting as well, where we live in this kind of capitalistic entrepreneurial society of like what you do is who you are, especially if you're making money at it, And I think I've had to try my best to believe that, like I said earlier, like just if I'm not making money from it, doesn't mean it's not what I'm doing or a part of who I am. But equally, music was never who I am. Like who I am is a person with all these complications that does music. And I have that kind of relationship with it. And if I start to like treat it like this like obsession or idol or some sort of like this, focal point of my life, I think what I end up doing is missing out on a lot of the other connection points that I'm trying to have.
So sometimes when people teach about fours, they say that fours struggle with knowing who they are. But I've had some fours tell me it's not that I struggle with knowing who I am. It's that I struggle with putting that into like a human body and a human experience. Like I think I am more than just this human body and this human experience. And what I struggle with is translating that into life. Do you relate to that?
Yeah, I think so. I think like thinking back as a kid in high school who was like, I'm 6'4", so I was naturally on a basketball team and I really wasn't great. I mean, I was not athletic.
They're like, get that tall kid over here.
Yeah, but I was always like on the B team or like on the bench or in the JV team, and starting to realize like people say I'm supposed to do this because of who I am, who my body is even. And A, I don't think I like it, and B, I'm clearly not very good at it. And so then I started doing music and other artistic expression and almost with this like, well, now I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And then, fast forward to what we were just talking about with not hitting whatever metrics I feel like I'm supposed to hit is just like another maybe like red mark against me, where now it's like, well, now I think I'm doing what I'm supposed to do as a person, but I don't fit in there either. And I'm not sure how much of that is my own perception or reality or both. And so I think at 31, I've spent actually pretty much the last 2 weeks with my wife talking through like, is the job I'm at, is that what I should be doing? Should we move again? Like, should we, I have this kind of phrase I've coined in my life called like vacation or like new city syndrome. And it's like anytime we've gone somewhere for vacation or we've toured somewhere and I see like a bunch of guys out surfing or somebody on a boat or like somebody, I'm like, oh, I would move here in a heartbeat and do that. Right. And my whole life would be happy because that seems so relaxing. And she'll be like, you don't even fish that much, or you don't know how to surf, or like, and then I'm like, but I could learn. And
right.
And so I've done that in my life, even a few times where I've taken on a new job skill or a completely, I'd say, arbitrary departure from something that made more sense to something that doesn't make sense because I'd say I'm seeking to figure out who I am and spending a lot of my effort letting other people inform that for me versus making some of those decisions myself. If that answers your question.
It does. Does it feel like what you're seeking is ever going to come from you? Or does it feel like something outside has to happen first and then you'll be happy? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know that's a really big and hard question, but
it's a great question.
Because I struggle with that too, like the idealized thing a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I'm just wondering what you think about that.
I think I craved that it would come from me. In my family, everybody kind of went into the entrepreneurial space after my dad. Everybody owns their own business. And everybody
Damn.
has actually done a pretty good job, like,
That's crazy.
with it, except I
Yeah.
would say me. Like, I'm still kind of like, I think I have my training wheels on with it a little bit, where I'm like, I don't really know what I'm doing, and then what would be successful or considered it by my parents or my family. And this is all mind reading. This is not actually what they've said. It's just like, me assuming
That's
what they would
important to
say.
name. Like,
It is.
this is the story that I tell myself, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Is that like, I think I crave the ability to have the like differentiation or the courage to say like, you know what, even if I've failed, I'm going to go out and do my own thing and take a stab at it. And I think I've actually spent quite a bit of effort in the last couple of years just being like, well, this is just safer, or just like the path's a little bit more laid out for me this way, even if it doesn't feel good all the way around at all times. Or not that I believe every job will be that way, but I do think, I don't know. I think there have been moments in my life that if there's any sort of like path you're supposed to be on, or any kind of just like lane that feels more comfortable than others, I think I've felt what that is. And I don't know that I would say I'm feeling it today. And so I think there is this kind of like, I gotta get out of here feeling.
Yeah, I'm waiting for something else.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'd say maybe the shift is that in the past I would have probably leapt with nowhere to leap towards. And now I'm kind of in this like, I don't know if this is quite it, but I really think that like once the next thing either presents itself and feels kind of like a natural step forward, that might be something that I'm onto something moment, versus just more of a little bit of chaotic, switching gears, I guess.
Right. I'm hearing a lot of, so one of the things we talk about in the Enneagram is, it's called your affect group. And 1s, 7s, and 4s are all in this group. And what 1s, 7s, and 4s share is that they often are frustrated by reality. They all do it in a different way, but they're frustrated. Like, they had an idealized version of what they wanted something to be. And then when life does not live up to that, they get really frustrated by it, right? And
I
I'm
relate to that.
hearing that. So what do you think specifically you idealize? I hear a lot of 4s talking about relationships, like they idealize relationships.
Sure.
But it sounds like sometimes like you're applying it more to your career, or do you think it affects like all aspects of your life to some extent? Like, do you see it in your relationship as well?
I think so. Let me think about that. I do see it in relationships in general. I think there was a time earlier in our 10 years of being married so far that I do remember being like, oh, I kind of wish she was more like this, or like, here are things that I wish we had more of connection-wise, communication-wise. And as if it was like, because that would make things easier for me or better. And it definitely didn't vocalize it. I think there was a fear of probably two-sided. Like, I didn't want to offend her or make her feel inadequate, and also like don't want to make it seem like this is all about what I want or something like that.
Right. What's changed? Because you said you used to feel like that. What's changed, do you think?
We had a pretty traumatic run a couple years ago, which included us moving back towards home, and just like a moment in our relationship that I'd say was the kind of moment that like even my parents talked a lot about when they're like, marriage is hard and this sort of thing. And like, and I think for the first 6 or 7, even 8 years of our marriage, I was like, yeah, it's hard, but it's not like that hard. Like, I mean, and I think a moment that I didn't expect to happen, where all of a sudden it was like, oh, our marriage could be over like tomorrow. And I'm blindsided by this. And I think she was blindsided by it more than, she thought at the time too. And I'm very grateful that we're still together, that we're working on it and working through it.
It sounds like you've done a lot of work on it.
Yeah. But I think that was the key, was that it was like, there was this like, what felt like supernatural, maybe empathy, and like a desire to understand each other at a super core, like rock bottom level, that, it's almost like I thought I knew you. And what I'm realizing now is that like, hey, I didn't know you and you didn't know me at full kind of vulnerability, because neither of us are very good at that. You're always like, even as an Enneagram 2, you're always putting me first. You're always helping me. Creates a lot of resentment. It creates a lot of pain on the back end. And I'm taking up a lot of space and feeling a lot of emotions and feeling like almost like I'm dragging you through the mud sometimes, and don't even realize it. And you're letting me, like you're okay with it until you're not.
Yeah, 2s just say yes to everything.
Yeah. And so I think to her credit, there was, despite what we had to go through to get here, now there's this really amazing opportunity in our marriage for her to start saying, like, I recognize I have to say what I want and like speak up for myself when I don't agree. And I think that was hard for me at first. I'm like, what? You've never done this before?
Right. What do you mean?
Yeah. And now I think there's just a different, like we both went to and have been going to a lot of, therapy, counseling, and just like working through some probably what stems from some family of origin and like childhood wounding that really manifested hard all at once in a way that was like so acute that I was like, I don't know how we can get through this. And I think on the back end, there's this maybe like a humility that allows us to just like show up and say like what we feel. I think both of us suffer from some level of codependency and like, definitely a lot of mind reading. And like, I'm not going to say what I want because I already know how this is going to end, instead of allowing the opportunity to connect and try to work through what's actually happening and give, opportunity to kind of have a back and forth. And so, yeah, I think the shift there in my relationship, specifically with her, is that I don't now find myself being like, I wish you were. I actually feel a lot of freedom to say like, I don't like when you, or it makes me feel rather like this is how I feel when you, and then we can have dialogue. But interestingly enough, I don't know that I have that freedom to do that with other people right now, because there's not trust with the general public or even my
can't my friends. Walk up to your boss and be like, you're making me feel this way. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. We're, my parents, my in-laws, my, whole family extended. I feel like there's this like, well, we have different political views, we have different religious views, we have different, so I'm already different, and I've already never been understood, so how in the world would you understand me now?
Right. There's just things we don't talk about. And is that, I think especially for a 4, I imagine that would be really hard, like feeling like there's these whole topics that you can't talk about. I was taught that 4s always, like 4s like to swim in the deep end. Like they want to talk about the deep stuff. They don't like swimming in the shallow end. They don't want to talk about weather with you. They don't want to talk all these things.
Yeah.
So does it feel like you're just talking weather all the time with all these people?
Oh, it's incredibly lonely, because I think what I've learned to now do is I've had so many weather conversations that now I just don't show up. Like why would I go to the family event if we're going to either A, talk about the weather, or B, start to get into the deep end only for everybody to yell shark and run out,
Yeah, that was a great line, by the way. That was good.
It's just nobody, and so then you're just alone, and you're like, I'm not a shark, I'm a person. Like, and I like to talk about issues and understand myself and understand people. And if no one's comfortable to do that, then maybe I'm a freak, or I'm just not. I'm not with you guys. I'm not. And I wish I was. I mean, there's a lot of hurt, I think, in my life that I looked around and, it's probably a cliche, but I'm like sitting at the party, probably by myself, like envisioning fitting in somewhere.
Yeah, of course. I think that's very common.
Eventually you just stop going.
Of course. So do you feel like, because I think what some people would say, well, there's still some level to be connection. There's still some connection to be had in the weather talk, right? Even if we can't get into all this other stuff, there's maybe still some connection to be had. We're still in the same room. We're talking, whatever. But does it really? I feel like when I talk to 4s, there is no connection unless we're in the deep end.
Yeah.
Like the connection does not exist unless we're talking about deep stuff. Do you feel like that's true for you?
Yes, I think so, because I just don't think I can identify. I guess talking about the weather is wasted space in my brain. It's like, we all know the weather is what it is. Why are we talking about it? But what we don't know is the things that we're not talking about. And that's interesting to me. Like, that's honest. It's vulnerable. It's human. I don't mind like an initial, if I just meet someone being like, how's your day going? And like, what kind of coffee do you like? And, but frankly, to like get on this podcast and go from 0 to 100, where all of a sudden I'm like vomiting like family trauma, is I'm like, oh, I can do this comfortably and then go enjoy like a cup of coffee because I'm not stressed by this. Whereas I know
love
people.
Having 4s.
Yeah.
You guys, like, you're the only people who are like, okay, let's talk about it, right?
Yeah.
It's great.
But that's what I was saying. I think even in like communicating with you prior to this, where I said like it becomes this like to a fault thing, where then all of a sudden I have this little like police in my brain that's like, hey, you're trauma dumping, aren't you? And I'm like, no, I don't think I am. Like, I'm not just opening up about everything that's wrong. I'm just trying to like tell them about
No,
myself.
you're giving context.
Right.
Like there's, right?
Mhm.
And I invited you on a podcast where you are where I ask you questions about yourself, right?
Sure.
So that all counts.
It's a lot safer here.
Yeah.
You know.
Can I read the line from your what you sent in? So
Sure.
Timothy, so whenever someone comes on the podcast, I have them fill out a little form kind of just about themselves. If anyone listening would like to be a guest, go to my website. The form is there. I'd love to talk to you. So one question is like, tell me about yourself. And then the next question is kind of tell me some things that you think would be relevant for like a podcast episode about your number, right? And Timothy in his intake form said that he tends to be overly transparent to a fault at times, but believes it to come from a desire to be earnest as a value and arguably an attempt to fill a connection void in my relationships. So I thought that was a baller line, first of all.
Thanks.
And I actually, as I read that out loud, well, first of all, do you want to say anything about that before I ask a question? You can say no.
No, I think something I was taking a few notes before this, just trying to like think about kind of who I am and what I would say. And I think one thing that stuck out that may or may not apply here is that I had a boss early on in my life. He was a pastor of a church, and during like an exit interview before I was moving cities to take on another job and do it, you know, do my whole thing.
Do the usual thing.
Exactly. Yeah. He asked if he could give me some advice, and I think the first thing he said was to like open a Roth IRA or something, which I was like, if you're not doing that, you should. But
thank you.
You're welcome. I'm not a business advisor, so don't take anything I say but I work for one. So
this is
anyway.
good. It's for people who are young. So that is
right.
True. If you do not have a Roth IRA, you should
get on it. Yeah. But the second component that really hit me, and clearly I'm still talking about it 10 years later, so it must have struck a chord, is he said, I think you trust people too quickly, and I think you need to be careful with what you share and how much you share, which I took as a cut. I took it as this, like, not an accolade, not a, like, that's a very noble thing, or very...
You should stop doing that.
Yeah, like, stop. Be more cynical about people, or, you know, for your own safety.
Oh, I think it's interesting that that's what you heard. Be more cynical instead of just don't trust people as quickly, which I guess maybe is the same thing. Does that feel like the same thing to you?
Yeah, or maybe not cynical, maybe guarded is what I was hearing.
Okay,
yeah,
I understand.
Just like,
okay,
hey,
keep
like,
going.
put a wall up. I guess the cynicism was almost like you can't trust anyone. So like until you can, that's almost what I felt like.
Yeah, assume that people have bad intentions.
Yeah, and I just I don't know that I do that naturally. I think I actually probably trust, like I have more faith or optimism in people, maybe to a fault even, but like I want to believe that that's a good quality to have until you're proven wrong. In which case I do have a very hard time trusting people if I've been burnt or, you know, deceived or something like that, though. I don't usually come back from that very easily. So, I think I only bring that up because in light of this communication void, I think what I walked away feeling was defeated around, well, if that's the only way I think I know how to connect with people, and you're telling me not to do it as a mentor or, an elder of mine.
Someone who's important to me.
Sure. I can choose to think you're wrong, which would also, in my brain as an extremist, mean that you've been wrong about a lot more than what I think you have. Or I think you're right, and I need to find a new way to connect with people, and I don't know at 25 years old what school you go to figure that out.
Right. Yes. I've heard, so I think this is one of the other things that people don't understand about fours. I think fours are kind of naturally sometimes withdrawn people, just in the sense that you like to spend time with yourself, right? You like to think about how you're feeling and all these things. I think sometimes people see that and they assume that fours are kind of like cold and detached. But I've heard almost every single four I've met have told me that connection is the most important thing to them in their entire life. Yeah. Like they want to feel connected to people.
I think so.
And so as someone who experiences both of those things, like what does it feel like to kind of have that contradictory nature like in yourself? Do you feel like it's contradictory?
Yeah,
actually?
I mean, I think it leaves me wondering, what the next step is. What do you like if you don't, I feel like if I'm in a room full of people that I know and trust and love, those people might say like, you're fun, you're extroverted, you love to be here, you're glue. And like, I've heard things like that. And I love those things. I feel very seen and loved. In a room of people I don't know, I am introverted and you're kind of standoffish or quiet, or you look like you don't want to be here. And that's not always true. I think it's an uncomfortable feeling to not know anybody in a room. I'm sure there's some like childhood wounds there just from switching schools or other things and feeling like I don't fit in. But I just think the thing I wish I could do better in a room of people I don't know is walk up and say hello and like talk about the weather and talk about something.
Why do you feel like you can't just walk up and say hello? What is your brain telling you?
That's a good question. I think there's a great deal of fear around being not enough for whatever the group is. Like probably a good deal of mind reading too. Like, oh, these people already all know each other. They already all get there's a vibe here that I'm not a part of yet or couldn't be. And so I think there's almost this like, that's the inadequacy part of the report that made me so teary is like, I'm already not good enough to be here. So I either have to sell my whole story to be good enough. I think I felt that even coming onto this podcast before I got here of like spending a little bit of time this morning feeling like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done this. Or maybe what if I fail? What if I'm bad at it? What if she hates my interview? And it's like, those are all these things that are cycling in my brain. And I look over at my wife and she's like, how you doing? And I'm like, well, good. What are you thinking about? She's like, no, nothing. And I'm like, I don't have that. I don't have the the nothing
I'm thinking.
part. I'm thinking about
right.
everything that could go wrong in every part of my life and how to fix it and how to be prepared. And it's more of an anxious feeling as somebody who doesn't identify as a very anxious person. There's a lot of social and like maybe character anxieties or just persona anxieties around like I want to be seen as successful. I actually had a friend of mine challenge me, and this is haunting to me, I'd say, at this point in my life, but I was venting to him about the music thing and just saying like, I just want to get on the big stage. I want to play X, Y, and Z venue and I want people to know my lyrics. And he's like, what? Imagine that's happening. Like you're on the stage, 2,000 people or however many, and they're all just like applauding. Is it enough? Is that what you want? And he said, man, I thought about it. And I was like, I almost feel like if that happened, I'd just be like, oh, I did it. And I'd move on to the next job. It's like, and then I start questioning, do I even love music? Or do I just feel like maybe what I've seen in it is that there's an opportunity to be under a spotlight in front of a bunch of people that for at least 2 hours make you feel like they're there for you, even though they're all going home at the end of the night. So I think that's something that I start to wrestle with is like, as I've started to walk away, not from music, but just like slow down in the like hustle to be famous or successful or whatever, and reevaluate. And with some great counsel from mentors of mine that are mostly in the psych or counseling field, but friends of mine, one of them said something to the effect of like this like second half of living moment that you're starting, or second half of life kind of period you might be finding yourself in, is offering you the opportunity to start seeing like who is across the table from you and allowing that to be enough. And so I think, again, going back to my marriage, it's like there's an opportunity to see like I have a partner who's my best friend and who I love and who sees me and witnesses more of my life than anybody else. Mm-hmm. And I still want these thousands of people to see me, mm-hmm. but that has never, ever filled the same void that one connection is. And so I'm trying to just like believe that and spend more time. But I think there almost is a shedding of like an maybe immature or more juvenile approach to life that has been painful but exciting at the same time, to say like maybe I have to like loosen my grip over here a little bit in order to allow room for the things I already have that I'm taking for granted.
Yeah. I hear a lot of, especially with the first half of what you were saying about being in a room of all these people and being so keenly aware that you do not have what, like you are missing something. There's already a vibe here. I'm not a part of it. We talk about 2, 3s, and 4s. They all struggle with shame a lot about who they are. shame is a really big word. I'm not going to get into it. But my definition of like shame, just specifically when we're talking about the Enneagram, is it's just this fear that people are going to find out who you really are. And who you really are is not good enough. Like that we all believe that we're not good enough on some level. We all have a different way of handling it. I'm sure you see in your wife, like she takes care of people so that she can earn the love that she feels like she doesn't deserve any other way,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
3s try to outperform it. 4s are kind of the only ones who like accept that it's there and talk about it out loud. And so other people hear 4s talk and they're like, oh, they're just, being a victim or playing like all these things,
Sure.
just go up and talk to somebody. But they're underestimating how strong and like how I'm a 3, so I can relate, like all encompassing this feeling of shame is and how close it feels that like people just at any moment are going to figure it out.
Sure.
That you know what I mean?
Yeah. I hear two things. Like one thing from that sparked in my brain is that like even hearing some of the other shame or pain points of other numbers is that like we probably are all as humans dealing with that feeling, but like another number's core reason or trigger for that feeling is different than mine. So a 7 is like, come on, let's go like party and be with people. Why can't you do this? And I'm like, because the thing in you that makes me feel what I feel is different. And the language is almost like, I don't know exactly what your trigger is or what's hard for you, but try to feel that for a minute and have the empathy that like, for me, this is what that is. And it's so hard. And I think the other thing is maybe ironically that like for myself as a 4, sometimes I feel like that vulnerability is actually a way to beat people to the punch of not having to be found out, because it's like, I'm going to tell you everything you could find out about me before you can. That way I'm in control. And I probably will still tailor it just enough that I don't look like a failure or like, I'm not going to get too risky, but I want to be riskier than you guys ever would be,
Yeah. Is there any pride in that second point? Like
I think so. Yeah. I think like even, I hear myself and I think, there's probably a gray area of like, this is healthy or maybe it's not, and where they coincide. But I think there's this like, oh, I know myself and I'm so introspective and I'm so self-aware and nobody else is. Like there's almost a demonizing of other people to a fault of like I could think about my external family or my coworkers at times where I'm like, well, they don't know themselves though.
Right.
And like they don't want to venture into the deep end, and I've been there. And I could be
I
a
live
guide,
there.
I could help them,
Yeah. And you could. That's the good thing about 4s is you actually are good at that. Like when people are brave enough to jump in the deep end with you, you know what it's like. Like you help people through these hard things, right? But sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, that's it. I mean, I think that therein lies the problem though, is sometimes, for sake of the metaphor, I'm sitting in the deep end yelling to everybody else, but the party's in the shallow end and nobody wants to come over here. And I have 2 options. I can go where I don't want to be, or I can, just quit. And I don't, and I think there is probably, as I recall, maybe more on this, but like I think there was a pretty core like sadness or loneliness or just melancholy around a 4 in general. And I think, I even think the test said like the one I took anyway, said the core statement to remember is that like you can't trust your feelings or don't always trust your feelings, I think is what it said.
It's like what I would say is like you don't always have to follow your feelings.
Yeah.
You can have them and then they can go. You don't, I think 4s, I've had a lot of 4s tell me they want to follow their feeling until the very end. So I had the story I always use for this, because I think it's so good, is a woman I know, she's a 4 and her son died. And he was an adult, she's older, and she went to his house and like put sad music on the radio and walked around the house and like, put her fingers up against the wall and like looked at all his pictures. And then she went in his closet and like smelled all his clothes and was just like so sad.
Yeah.
But she said like she was already feeling sad. She just wanted to go to the bottom of it. Yeah. She wanted to see how deep it would go. Right. And The way she told that story, it like illustrated something fours for me that I'd never heard. Like, she was not making up that she was that sad, right?
No.
People look at fours and they think you're dramatic, but you're not making anything up. You're just the only people who are willing to follow a feeling to the end. The rest of us are just shutting it off before it gets that big.
Sure.
Right? But you're not making stuff up. You're not being dramatic. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I don't know if fours as a whole, but I definitely know about myself that I don't know how to express the feelings I feel often. So like I've done that sort of thing in major moments of sadness, almost as a way of experimenting. Like, is this how I can release it? Is this how I can get it out? Is this like, whether it's like I'm angry, I'm going to throw something, or I'm sad and I need to like go sit like by the lake and just like, at sunset and try to create this environment that's and it's just like, it's not even trying to be like, nobody's watching this. It's It's literally just
it's
me
just
and
you.
The universe. And I'm just sitting there like, is this how I attempt to engage with the feeling as if it's a person? Like, I can't even connect with that,
Right. Ooh, that's interesting. As if it's a person. That's good.
I don't know.
Okay, I have my last question for you, okay? This is how I end all these
Sure.
podcasts. How old are you? You said you're 31?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 10 years ago, if you could go back 10 years, tell your 21-year-old self something. If you can give them one piece of advice, what would it be?
Around that time in my life, I spent a lot of time using the phrase, like, I can't wait for my life to get started. I can't wait for things to start working out, or whatever. And I think if I was in such a position where the 21-year-old trusted that I was me and I knew more than him.
First of all, believe me.
Like, seriously, I've got proof. You're gonna want to hear this. I would say your life started 21 years ago. You're in the middle of a fluid and exciting and dynamic life, and it's not going to go the way you think it is. But if you can try to relinquish some control now and just allow some things to happen and be a part of it and engage with it, you'll probably get a lot more out of it than if you keep idealizing the thing that's in front of you as if it's like a carrot on a stick.
Right. I think that's great. That kind of makes me want to cry a little bit. That's really good.
Me too.
Okay, Timothy, tell the people where they can find, if they want to look you up, where they can find your music and stuff.
My artist name is just my full name, Timothy Edward Carpenter. I'm on all of the streaming platforms, I think, and Instagram is the same, and I don't actually think I have a Facebook, and I have a website, which is also TimothyEdwardCarpenter.com. So essentially, If you Google those three names in order, you'll probably find my stuff.
You'll find them.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Timothy, for being here.
Thank you, Katie. Thanks for having me. This is amazing.
Of course.
And I hope I run into you in town.
Absolutely.